Hi. I guess we're live now, hey?
I think
Hello.
so.
Wow.
Hi, y'all.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
Um okay. Should I just jump right into
Sure.
the
Yeah,
thing?
let's do it.
Alrighty. Unokun uvanga kablusiak apang ma atinga Arlen Carpenter ikahokmun ama mga atinga Holly Nasagalo at Carpenter tuktuyak tumun. Good evening. My name is Kablusiak. My father is Arlen Carpenter from Sax Harbor, and my mother is Holly Nasagalo Carpenter from Tuktoyaktuk. And that's just like the traditional Inuk way of introducing yourself. So, Koya Naini for joining us this evening, and welcome to an artist discussion about Garfield. Part of Dunlop at Home programming. Tonight we'll be chatting with Molly Caldwell and Hazel Meyer about Garfield. Tonight's program will be about 45 minutes in length, and please note that there will be time for question and discussion, so you could add your comments throughout the this evening's program, and we'll answer the questions throughout the talk. I'm not used to talking to so many people, so I'm just used to talking to Garfield. So usually the speaker would say a land acknowledgement at this part, and I've been thinking a lot over this pandemic in all senses of the word, and I would like us to take a moment to think about land acknowledgements instead. Who are they for? What purpose do they serve? And if you are a settler, what concrete actions are you doing in your community to support and stand behind the nations whose land you're living on? The Dunlop is located on the traditional territory of the Cree, Soto, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and homeland of the Métis. Molly and myself are based in Mohkinstsis, also known as Calgary, which is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, Piikani, and Gaina First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, inclusive of the Chiniki, Wesley, and Bearspaw First Nation, and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Hazel Meyer is based in Vancouver, the unceded territory of Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Stalo, and Musqueam nations. This thought is not my thought, it's not an original thought. I was inspired from Instagram user Shoshone Waipe. I hope I'm not butchering that. Their quote, "Unless you are working to maintain a substantial relationship and create radical wellness for Indigenous communities, your land acknowledgement is a virtuous gesture." So there's that instead of a land acknowledgement. So, as I said earlier, I'm here with Hazel Meyer and Molly Caldwell. And I guess we could jump right into it and start talking about Garfield. So I guess the first prompt question I have for you two, why Garfield?
Well, Hazel, do you want to go first since you're just surrounded?
Oh, okay. Why Garfield? All right. Well, you sent us all those lovely questions, and I've just been sort of thinking them through. And I think I've never really made art about Garfield per se, but when I read your questions, and I was trying to actually be like thoughtful about Garfield as opposed to just like kind of joyful. When I was maybe trying to be a little critical of Garfield also, I realized that I think I've always understood Garfield as like a muse of sorts, just like kind of crotchety, a bit of a queen, a bit of a a bon vivant in this way that I don't want to replicate all his qualities, but I definitely appreciate them. And I think just on a very basic level too, like I love a character with large eyes and like little beady pupils. And, you know, growing up in the 70s, like Garfield kind of saw me through my childhood and my adolescence and my like 20s and 30s. And yeah, I don't know, he's just kind of stuck. So maybe I'll just leave it at that, and you know, things can tease out along the way. But yeah, that's why Garfield. But also I just want to say, when you like proposed this talk, I was like really just so ecstatic. Like it feels like the perfect balm for right now. You know, it won't really heal anything, but it's a balm for like a bit of you know, joy for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely identify with like a lot of that. I think that there's a lot of like childhood comfort in Garfield for sure, in just his presence. I think obviously he was like very big in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So for a lot of people, I think he holds that. But I agree in the sense that he is maybe the worst qualities in all of us and the best qualities in all of us. And there's something just, you know, great in just identifying with him, I find. And just, you know, how unapologetic he is in just being himself. He's both, you know, yeah, a muse and an aspiration, I find. Someone I'm constantly maybe trying to emulate a little bit more in, you know, just his, I think he's becoming more and more rebellious as the years go on, as maybe we see the climate changing and everything. But yeah, I definitely see that there's a lot of, I don't know, joy and happiness and comfort in him. Also, the fact that there was just like millions of plush figures. So literally he is just comforting to so many people as, you know, Kablusiak is clutching theirs. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with these feelings, and I think a big part of this like guest curatorial role that I was offered by the Dunlop has to do a lot with like the healing balm of like something so flippant in a way. I don't know if that's the right word, but I can't find the right word for it. But it's like, because normally my brain goes to, you know, my art practice, which is like an offshoot of like Indigenous trauma and Inuit trauma, and having a different sort of kind of going over all of that trauma stuff and be like, you know what, Garfield, it seemed like a good way to, you know, a good way to get audiences involved in the art world that doesn't re-traumatize anybody.
I heard, gosh, it was aired way after you had done it, but it was like the CBC Sobeys interviews. And Kablusiak, I was in the car with my partner one day and we turned it on. It was at night. And yours came on and we listened to it through. And I think you ended on this amazing note talking about, I think it was like a dog rescue or a dog sanctuary or dogs. And you were just like, I want the day to come when I can just make art about dogs. And so when you, you know, asked me about this Garfield talk, there was this like kind of moment in my heart where I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is a little bit of that art about dogs. Like maybe this is a moment in which you can like just like, yeah, you know, go to that place and still be your political self and have your you know, your artwork, and but then also understand that like this, that can encompass Garfield and dogs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. The freedom of like not being chained to trauma is very liberating.
Yeah.
I'm going through my questions and I'm wondering if I should just go down the line and we could just
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So What is your first memory of Garfield?
Funny enough, I used to, my parents used to take me to this um, used bookstore that's quite big in Calgary, where we're from, called Ferris Fair. And there was a section of comedy that I always used to go to just because they were all cartoons. And I loved the landscape Garfield comics. They were my favorites. Um, so that's definitely like a very early, yes, those ones. Exactly. Oh my God. Yes, 100%. And I always used to buy those and loved them. They were my favorites. And also Garfield and Friends in the 90s. It was a really, really big thing for me. It was one of my favorite cartoon shows for sure growing up.
Nice. My first memory of Garfield has to do with an object. So it's this little guy, and it's a pencil topper. And I had an Odie also, and I don't know where it went, but I have such an early like muscle memory of bending down Odie's ears, because Odie's ears are quite long and bend over, and the rubber was like soft enough that I would just like always bend it down. And so I don't know where Odie is, but this Garfield has stayed with me. And I think a lot of my memories having to do with Garfield are very much based in like, because he was licensed so much. And I don't know if this is for real. I think it is, but like supposedly Jim Davis, when he started drawing the comics, spent like, 20% of his time drawing Garfield and 80% of his time like developing the licensing for Garfield, which is like very easy to believe given how ubiquitous this cat is, right? It's not as if it was like a brilliant cartoon or anything like that, but because of that, yeah, I just have like all these like memories that are very based in like objects. And this one in particular, I don't know if you can see, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not very good with this screen thing, but there's this like little, right up there, this little bit of ear that was taken off. And that was from my first X-Acto knife that I got in high school, that I remember I didn't change the blade for 5 years. But I just remember, I don't know why, I guess this little thing was near me. I was like, how sharp is this? And I like sliced a bit of the ear off. So yeah, I like lots of memories in this. So yeah, anyways, this little guy is my first memory of Garfield.
I love that. That's so tender.
How about you?
Oh, yeah, it definitely revolves around the comics. Like, I don't know if this is TMI, but I guess we're all here, so. I remember they would, like, in my parents' apartment growing up, they would be, like, on the toilet tank. So you'd, like, reach behind and, like, read these Garfield comics as you were doing your business. It's just like a very vivid memory of me just like chilling on the toilet, like reading comics.
That's so amazing because the shape is like perfect for the back of a toilet.
It's like meant for a toilet tank, 100%.
Right?
It was very ideal, but
I love it.
I feel like I must have like stole those from the library because I don't know how they ended up in my parents' place. I have no memory of dragging my mom to the bookstore or anything, so
yeah. I love that you said that because this book is marked with Hawthorne, which is my public school, the public school I went to, and this was the first thing I stole in my entire life. And I have no idea why I did it. I kind of looked through it. I was like, what about this one in particular? But I just needed to have it. Yeah, I wonder if that's like kind of a common thread for some folks, just like liberating them from public school libraries.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the questions I was thinking about in the creating of this Garfield programming, I was chatting with my friend Missy, just like spitballing ideas, and we were thinking about the cartoon and any various iteration where you hear Garfield speak, even though he doesn't like move his mouth usually. But the voice actor of Garfield I know what's his name? Bill Murray voiced, I think, during the movie, but generally it's like a older white dude, and Garfield like almost sounds like a boomer. Does that change how you feel about Garfield at all and your interpretation of this cat?
I mean, like, no. Only because I can justify it in my head is I just assume that Garfield's voice is John's iteration of what he's assuming Garfield sounds like. So of course John would assume that Garfield would sound like one of his peers, when Garfield, likely probably doesn't. But I've always just assumed it's just been kind of the majority of who's reading Garfield. And maybe the majority would have been boomers reading the newspaper and reading the Garfield comics. I know before I was looking this up when you first gave us the questions just to see who the voice actor was. And he is a boomer. He's a boomer. But his name is Lorenzo Magic. So.
Wow. Lorenzo Magic.
Yes, his name is Lorenzo Magic, and he went by Mr. Magic. So, I mean,
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Lorenzo Magic, the voice actor. I don't think I saw a whole bunch of the cartoons. I think maybe, I'm trying to remember why. I think it was maybe like by the time I got to a certain age, the cartoons started, and then I wasn't, whatever. I don't know why, but I never really did. And I've not seen the movies. And I think part of it is like, this boomer voice that you're talking about. I think I've never actually articulated it to myself, but I think that might be it. But I did watch, so I watched, it's like let me start again. I watched Boys in the Band, which is like that movie on Netflix that was a play. And saw it just last week. And when I was thinking about Garfield after, I was like, oh, Garfield kind of sounded like one of the men in this play, in this movie, which is like pre-AIDS, like about these gay men, I think it's 5 gay men. And, if maybe I'm like trying to reclaim Garfield's voice a bit, I kind of also potentially could sound like sort of an aging queer man, like a bit of a queen, and there's this one character in particular, well, 2 of them. Jim Parsons plays this character, Michael, and then there's this other character, Harold, and it's very, the affect is very, very similar, and it got me thinking also about Pookie, Garfield's like dearest, most tender friends, like his stuffed bear. And this relationship in Boys in the Band between Michael and Harold also kind of reminded me of Garfield, who's kind of like, I don't love anyone, I don't need anyone, I love lasagna, that's it, leave me alone, harsh, 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 slam, 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 joke, joke, joke. But then it's like, oh my gosh, Pookie, I love you. There's something like gay about that. But again, I think this is me just trying to read like a queer narrative onto Garfield.
I would agree. I think Garfield's he's too sharp. He's too witty in his kind of comebacks to be just a straight cis boomer man. There's just something a little bit elevated about his kind of interactions with everyone that's just a little bit beyond, I think, which is probably why we all are okay with it.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely. That makes me feel better, knowing that, like, I don't know, I often do this with, like, other things in my life where I'm, like, rationalizing it as, like, queer. It's like, I think that's just how we have to, like, make it through this world sometimes.
Yeah, agreed.
So Garfield, he hates Mondays, obviously. But this made me think of the quote, and I honestly don't know where this quote came from. Maybe it was just like a Twitter user, speaking some truth. But the quote is, "You don't hate Mondays, you hate capitalism." If we didn't have to work jobs to pay rent to exist in this world, do you think Garfield do you think he would still hate Mondays?
I think Garfield is the perfect example of just a life lived critically. Like, I don't think Garfield would ever be happy in this sense. I think he's like a political killjoy. You know, he likes to remind us of what's at stake and, you know, what we're really, really being affected by. So even if he didn't hate Mondays, I feel like there would be a Monday to hate, per se, whatever that Monday might be. But in the sense that I think it's in a really productive way, you know, he's reminding us of, you know, to constantly be looking at the world in a critical eye and a critical lens and, you know, waking up and remembering, you know, it does suck that 9 to 5s exist and that, you know, Monday is the start of the work week and it's only a 2-day weekend. But yeah, I do think that Garfield, he just has a critical lens. And I know that like most people would like consider him like a cynic, but as someone who's maybe been considered like a killjoy cynic myself, I like to look at it in more of like a positive way, you know, in a way that he is just more vocal about these issues than maybe Odie would be. We can't all be Odies, you know.
No, we
We need to be
can't.
Garfields.
Oh my God, I love how you just called Garfield a political killjoy. Oh, that's so good. My answer to that was like way less positive because I'm like, and I like kind of don't even want to say it now, but I kind of feel as though like Garfield is a product of capitalism. Like Jim Davis made Garfield to like speak to the working person, you know, and Garfield's kind of like the foil. And I think if like the world Jim Davis was in while drawing Garfield, I think if it was like a system other than capitalism, I don't think Garfield would have come about. But I think perhaps like at some point Garfield got the better of his beginnings and has morphed into this political killjoy. But I just like, yeah, it's like the dirty underbelly of Garfield just feels like he was just made to, you know, speak to the masses who were, you know, working these kinds of jobs. And they were like, oh, here's not an anthem, but here's like a little cat to put on a flag. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, what is that phrase for somebody who like will ignore any sort of like realism and just be like so ridiculously happy, like toxic positivity? That it's like that feels like Odie.
Odie is toxic positivity.
I also think maybe like Odie has some like needs and desires that aren't being fulfilled, or they are being fulfilled and we're misreading it as like Odie being a pushover and being overly positive when maybe this is like just some like scene, some larger scene
Yeah.
that we're not privy to, like the, you know, the negotiation beforehand.
It looks like we have some questions from the viewers. Okay, can you folks still hear me if my chat screen is up?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sick. Thomas Johnson says, what are your thoughts / experiences of the Garfield Halloween episode?
That's an amazing question. I have not seen it for years and years and years, so I'm not the best one to answer, but I did feel as though I wanted to say what a great question that was.
Yeah, that's one for like that's like a deep cut memory. That one's like way, way back in the brain. That's like, I mean, maybe as like research, we should have all rewatched the Garfield Halloween episode, the one, you know.
Probably.
It is. I'm glad to hear that the viewers though have as many kind of intimate experiences though with Garfield, enough to refer to the Halloween episode. The one.
Yes.
I love it. So good. Wendy Pert, they ask, why do you think Garfield is obsessed with lasagna?
Oh, Garfield is a fat icon. Like, in my opinion, he is the ultimate fat icon in the sense that like his enjoyment and obsession over food. Because when you think of a food obsession, it's mostly coming from a restrictive sense of like food you cannot eat. But Garfield's food obsession is all the food that he wants to eat and plans on eating. So I look at him as this very radical kind of, it's like a very radical obsession with lasagna, you know? It's his favorite thing, and he's always going to indulge it no matter what. He'll eat the whole pan every time, you know? And I think, you know, I think he does it probably because it's tasty, but I like to think he does it because he knows it's a radical move, that enjoying food is, you know, contemporarily something very radical to do, especially as someone who acknowledges themselves as being fat. Being, you know, a fat cat who loves pasta, I think is quite important in this world. But probably because it's just tasty. Lasagna is just delicious.
I was going through all my stuff and I came through this one. This is one of those.
Yes.
You know, it's pretty amazing, right? Just, you know, sort of as a side note to what you were saying, Molly.
That looks like you got it at the Scholastic Book Fair.
I think I might have. Just thinking about lasagna, it is a bit of a strange choice. It's like drawing lasagna isn't like, you would think drawing a plate of spaghetti might be a bit more exciting as a drawing, you know, like lasagna as Jim Davis draws it is really just kind of this, you know, shallow kind of pan, and you need to be told it's lasagna to know that it's lasagna, right? There's, you know, it's kind of checked on the top, but that, you know, could kind of be anything. It could, you know, be a cheesecake or something. But I'm curious. I wonder, I'd love to ask Jim Davis myself, but I wonder, like, the word is kind of amazing. Like, I love saying lasagna, right? And I wonder if there was like a little bit of like him imagining, you know, the readers saying lasagna, lasagna, lasagna. Like, I think there might have been something there, you know? I wonder.
Yeah, I was reading, there's like a Garfield Wikipedia, and he was born in like an Italian restaurant. So that's his like comfort food, I think, is lasagna. 'Cause he's,
Nice.
I think that's what he had when he was first born. Like, not even his mother's milk, just straight up lasagna.
Lasagna from the womb.
I wonder if his like first bed was a little lasagna pan.
Oh.
Origin story. Oh.
Is that it from, oh, there's a third question. There we go. Ginger Carlson asks, what are your thoughts on Garfield minus Garfield?
I like Garfield minus Garfield. As much as I love Garfield, there is just something so surreally bizarre about the whole thing. I've never owned a cat, so I don't know what it's really like to kind of be interacting with a cat on a daily basis. It seems like Garfield without Garfield is what most people's lives are like with cats, is where you're just kind of having these empty interactions with an animal. But I mean, I don't know. I love Garfield minus Garfield, though. I think it's, I don't know, depressing in all the best ways.
Yeah, you've said it all. It's, yeah, truly, truly what you just said. It's like the highbrow version of my lowbrow love of Garfield.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find that I can't look at too many of those comics because they're just like such a bummer. Like, this is way too real. I can't handle this.
Yeah.
Some
right.
escapism.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Socrates Alvarez asks, what do you think about Garfield and John's relationship?
I mean, this is another thing that I think it's a very particular cat and human kind of relationship. I mean, I'm a dog person. I'm an Odie person. I need that endless toxic positivity love in order to survive my life. You know, having a little creature there to remind me of the cynicism of every day would not be beneficial. But I think maybe John needs that. John seems like a little bit of a toxic optimist. You know, maybe he needs a little bit of grounding. And, you know, I hope he can appreciate Garfield for that, you know. Like I said, I think, you know, not all of us can be Odies, and we shouldn't all be Odies. You know, we need a Garfield in our life. And I think the reason Garfield and John are so close is that maybe John needs that more than some people.
Again, beautifully put. I don't know if there's anything else to say. No, truly, truly. I think, yeah, it's like this kind of example of how everybody needs something different, and who are we to say? And I think, you know, I think those two, John and Garfield, are just sort of extreme versions of this maybe dynamic that many of us have with various people. And yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the relationship where it's like, I've been watching a lot of Drag Race, and I think it's season 6 or season 5, but the one with Bianca Del Rio, and how by the end of the season she's like has this like heart of gold, but on the outside will be like, oh, you know, expletive let me help you pack your bags. I think it's that kind of relationship of like Garfield is the one who's like claws out, but, you know, has that like soft gooey center, and I think John knows that, and I think there's like this like acknowledgement, but not to the point where you burst the bubble, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Danny McCartney asks, speaking to queerness and queens, do you think Garfield is referenced from the original fat icon drag queen Divine in Pink Flamingos?
Wow,
Like,
that's a great question.
That is such a good question. I've never made that kind of connection before, but now looking at it, I mean, it's so clear that Garfield is like an old gay drag queen who's just retired and no longer dresses up, because clearly, like, yeah, just like such a queen. And I also think like Divine like also very much embraced a lot of these qualities that a lot of people kind of fear, such as being like the most grotesque person, that I think Garfield definitely, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like the worst qualities in people that sometimes need to be embraced, he does, in the same way that Divine kind of did it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious to know what Jim Davis's like, what his sort of intentions were, because I don't know. I think if you look at some of these things, I think Paws is out of Kansas. Isn't that where he was drawing at first? I think so. I'm just curious what, like, you know, straight white man in Kansas drawing like a comic for syndication was sort of like imagining, but I definitely like Divine. Definitely Garfield holds like a queer queen in his heart if he is not fully that, you know.
I love it. I don't think I would have come to this if not for this discussion. I'm really into it. Oh, Jesse Short asks via Thomas Johnson. I used to have a sweatshirt when I was 8 with Garfield on it. The shirt said, "I'll procrastinate tomorrow." I had no idea what this shirt meant, but I knew I would get it one day. Anyway, how does Garfield differ for you as an adult versus when you were a child?
That's a really perfect example, I think, of what many people have felt with Garfield. I probably shouldn't speak for anyone but myself, but that's like super, super familiar. And I think I get so much pleasure now as I find objects that I either had in the past or that, you know, I haven't ever seen before. And I imagine myself kind of seeing them as a child versus now. And one of them, sorry, I have all these like objects. Is this amazing mug? And so Garfield has like a studded leather wristband on and has like a flogger. And, you know, as an adult who engages in the world how I choose, like I understand that in a very different way than I would have when I was a child. And I think it's like part of the reason I love Garfield, but also just another reason I want to talk to Jim Davis. I'm just like, yeah, he seemed to, yeah, I don't even think it was intentional necessarily, but it was like this cartoon kind of marketed to children and young adults, but also adults. And he just kind of, I don't know, like the sort of objects and the material culture he engages with really can kind of be read in many, many ways. And I like that. I think it gives objects it gives due respect to objects and sort of the multiplicity of meanings that can be read into things.
Yeah, and I think
the mug say, Hazel.
Molly. I'll just show you again. It says I'm in charge here. Chin chin.
Yeah, I think it's like definitely one of those like cliches of like adults telling children like you'll get it when you're older type thing. Like when you're a kid, you probably, I mean, when I was younger, my favorite character was like Nermal, because Nermal was just so
the world's cutest kitten.
Yeah, exactly. And like so simple. And, you know, Garfield was just like so, you know, cynical. But growing up, obviously, you realize like why he's cynical and what he's talking about. And you really kind of start to identify with him more. So I don't think Garfield changes, just necessarily we probably do as people.
Missy LeBlanc. I'm sorry. I get nervous saying your last name, Missy. What are y'all's thoughts on r/I'm sorry, John?
Me and my boyfriend were actually talking about this earlier today, and he was wondering if I was going to bring up I'm sorry, John into this chat, because it's just, have you guys seen I'm sorry, John? Like the subreddit?
No.
Oh, okay. It's just essentially what it is. It's just like a subreddit of very surreal Garfield cartoons. Some of it is like original and some of it's just a very bizarre place to be. It's like Garfield without Garfield, but even more bizarre. And I mean, I really like it. It's like, I think this idea of like taking these like very capitalistic kind of objects and then just like transmorphing them into these like, I don't know, weird millennial humor memes. They're all like deep fried too. So it's just like, it's like a very chaotic place to be on the internet, needless to say. I highly suggest anyone, including you two, who hasn't heard of I'm Sorry, John, go check it out tonight.
And you said it's like a Reddit thread?
It's a subreddit. Yeah.
Subreddit. Okay.
Yeah. It's I'm Sorry, John. And it's just very bizarre.
All right. You know where to find me later.
James Jensen asks, is Garfield still relevant to Generation Z?
That's a good question, because I almost think Gen Z is like too, you know, it's maybe one of the generations that aren't so burdened down with cynicism. They're, you know, kind of very proactive. At least in my eyes, they're very kind of proactive and very forward thinking. I would hope that Garfield is relevant to every generation, that every generation can find something of themselves in Garfield. But I definitely think maybe Garfield's cynicism is growing out of fashion, which I think is a good thing.
That was a great answer. I'm just going to let it stay there. I have no idea. And but I liked your response, Molly, very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm on the same page.
No.
Okay, do we have any more? Oh, okay, that was the last question. And there is 5 minutes left in this little chat. So what should we do with the last 5 minutes?
I don't know. Do you want to talk about our favorite things about Garfield? I don't know. Maybe just bring up one thing that you're like most happy to talk about when it comes to Garfield.
Okay. Do you want to start?
I mean, I love Garfield because I found him very easy to memorize to draw as a child. So he's something that I go back to very quickly if I'm on the phone. My favorite thing about him is the fact that his eyelids are one line across his eyes.
Mm.
So it's really easy and it's really quick to draw him, which is probably my favorite thing and has always been my favorite thing about him. His little stoner eyelids that are really low, and then the little beady eyes underneath. Yeah, my favorite.
Which is kind of amazing because as a kid, it made you feel capable because you're like, oh, I can draw this. I got this. Which is like quite lovely to feel at any age, really. I can't even remember what the question was, but I'll just say this. What I love about Garfield is I love the stuff. And my partner and I, we have a little Garfield sanctuary. If anyone wants to donate any of their objets, they're more than welcome to. My partner's like kind of thinks and writes a lot about archives, so we tend to do that on a more sort of intellectual way. But then with like Garfield, I'm like allowed to kind of indulge in like the thinking about like metadata and letterhead and like conservation things in sort of more of a lighthearted, jokey way, and I really like that. And I think it's nice sometimes to have like a little something to push up against. And I'm just gonna end that thought with my another favorite object of mine, and it's like incredible red Garfield hanky.
Oh my God,
it's kind of, yeah, it looks so much like, a hanky that one would engage in the hanky code with. And if you don't know what that is, you can just look that up. But this is like this amazing red hanky that I was like, oh my gosh, I found an object that engages all parts of me. Yeah, Garfield, who knew?
Are we allowed to ask what red stands for in the hanky code in this
conversation? Oh, it has to do with fists.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad Garfield chose that color.
Right. Or Jim Davis.
Yes. Or Jim.
Wrists.
How about you, Kablusiak?
I think something about like this era of Garfield, like whatever, what is this, late 80s maybe? But like just like the way that he's drawn in this specific era speaks to me, and there's something like very comforting and warm, and something about it just sparks joy, and I wish I knew what that was so I could articulate it. But there's just something about it that, I don't know. I don't want to say nostalgia because I don't want to, but something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Garfield wearing Garfield slippers. Art, you guys.
I checked on the tag. I think it's 81.
81.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about 81. Yeah.
Garfield 81.
Amazing. Okay, what does the chat say? Okay. I think I guess that's our cue to wrap it up. So thank you, Molly and Hazel. This was like so heartwarming and very beautiful, and I'm happy we got to do it via the Dunlop. So thank you. And thanks for everybody tuning in at home. This is a very fun way to engage with everybody. So
yes, thank you, Dunlop, and thank you, Kablusiak, for inviting us to chat about Garfield. It really has brought up a lot of warmth in me tonight, and I'm hoping to ride this out now for a while. So,
ditto. That's the balm. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Kablusiak. Thank you, Dunlop.
Yeah. All right.